Awesome. Hi there. We're excited to have Lisa Genovese with Bottom Line Marketing with us today for our leadership conversation. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, nice to see you, Charlie.
Hi, you too. So, for some background info, my name is Tara Lee. My company, Next Level Challenge, specializes in teams that work. And that cool lingo actually came from Lisa's team.
I was pretty excited walking you guys through that.
Yeah, it was awesome. So we
hmm
launched Leadership Conversations. Really, we want to help teams and leaders be their best. And nothing really does this better in my experience than experience. So experience that we've had ourselves and experiences that we can learn from other people. So this is why we love talking to leaders like Lisa, who've done really great things with their teams. We're looking forward to hearing some of the challenges that Lisa has overcome as a leader with her team and sharing her stories with others that are looking for some inspiration. So I am fortunate to have known Lisa for quite a few years. Would consider her a friend, and we've been fortunate to have her team support us with our own marketing initiatives. So even this leadership conversation was kind of inspired through some work that I've done with Lisa. So thank you for that.
Thank you for thinking of me.
So I consider Lisa a courageous leader who believes in her team and truly cares for her clients. So it's awesome to have you here as I kick off my leadership conversation series, and this being my first official video. So let's just jump into it.
Great.
So starting off, just tell me a little bit about your business, Lisa, and your team.
Well, Bottom Line was founded in 2011, and how I got started was I was working for an agency that will say the results were a little subpar, and the way that they worked with their teams and also with their clients I felt could be a lot better. And so, like any entrepreneur, I decided to jump ship and start my own company. And my two direct reports from that agency left, and they actually worked together with us for the last, well, probably about 7.5 years. They both have recently moved on, but it's been a pretty awesome journey of learning lessons for myself, and we've had tremendous growth since 2011. So we went from just the three of us, we're now 13 people full time, with a lot of freelancers and contractors that help us as trusted partners along the way as well. Primarily, we help clients evolve their brand and their business. And so we're not only looking at their challenges from just a marketing lens, but we're really looking at their business holistically and helping them figure out, okay, what's your next kind of level of evolution, and how can we help you reach your goals. So
Awesome. And that was truly our experience working with you. We kind of, being that, you do your marketing on your own for so many years and just get to a place where, you can't read the label from inside the bottle. So you provide.
I love that analogy. It's such a good one.
So I know you have some uniquenesses to your team. You have some team members here, some that work virtually. So what are some of the team challenges that you've overcome in your team? If you could pick one big one that you've had to overcome, what would it be, and how did you solve it? What did you do?
Oh, funny. How much time do you have? Managing a team is one of the most rewarding experiences, but certainly one of the most challenging. What first comes to my mind is actually some of the challenges I have had very recently. So we had a new project manager start in our company back in September. His name is Yemi, and he has been absolutely wonderful. He came with a really strong project management background, obviously, for the role, but he was still learning in the marketing realm. And so it's been great to kind of take him under my wing and be able to mentor him and teach him what I know. But the challenge has been, for me, if I'm being very, very vulnerable and honest, is I'm learning I'm a little bit of a control freak. And that, being able to let go and allow him to kind of step into his own leadership and take some of the big projects that I was managing myself, and let him kind of spread his wings and fly. And it's been it's been good, but it's been hard for me to be able to recognize, like, no, this is where you need to butt out, Lisa. Or, no, this is actually a time where you should actually step in and provide some guidance because you can see things are maybe not quite on the right track.
Yeah.
And so I have found that really challenging to kind of navigate when's the right time to step in and when's the right time to, back off and let him do his job and what he's good at. So that's been pretty tough.
That's an exciting evolution in your business, though, to be able to take that next step. I was watching the interview that you did with Sean Freeman with TWT last night.
Okay.
He spoke to that. One of the greatest, wins he feels in his business is when he can just be able to walk away from his business and know that his clients are going to be cared for and everything's going to function. So I'm good on you to take that step to be able to get there. So what were some of the what have you done to actually overcome that? What kind of learnings have you relied on? Or if you were to go through that experience again, is there something that you think you could do a little bit differently to make that process easier?
That's a good question. So one of the things, the biggest thing for me has been working with my coach. They have been so supportive. Rich and Fallon Groff have been so supportive in helping me kind of figure out and navigate this, because it's been I've managed lots of staff in my day, but nobody that's supposed to replace me. So they've been great at supporting me. In terms of things that I have done, one of the biggest things is setting clear expectations and making sure that the other person really understands what it is I'm asking of them. And making sure that it's clear when I'm expecting it to be done. So one of the things that I found was sometimes happening is I would say, okay, we have a weekly managers meeting every Tuesday afternoon. And I would say, okay, here are some things that I'm seeing. Here's what, I'm hoping we can do to either adjust that or hoping to see happen. And, I would say, but I feel like this is really urgent. Well, urgent to me is a very different timeline than what might be to the other person. And so, and you're giggling because I know you know this, but making sure that I'm really clear on here is what I see needs to happen by this particular date, and then asking that, like, and it's not a tell, it's an ask, and then giving that person the opportunity to say, actually, I don't know if that's realistic with what else I've got on my plate, or yeah, that's doable and I'll have it done by X day and X time. So it's really clear. They're kind of reiterating back to me what they heard, and it gives the opportunity to kind of debrief it or unpack it if they didn't hear what I was saying, or vice versa. And it's funny, I do this with the rest of my team. I don't know why it has been this particular role where it's almost like I've gone back to training wheels with management for some reason. I'm kind of laughing at myself. I think it's probably the stress it's causing me. And I'm maybe not necessarily firing on all cylinders, but that's probably the biggest one, is making sure that the expectations are clear. But the other thing that I have been kind of training myself is to ask in my head before I go and do something. So whether it be following up on a task, or before I start questioning things, going elsewhere to look for the answers before I ask that person. And so some people might view that as really inefficient, but there have been a couple occasions, and again, being very vulnerable here, where I have completely stepped on his toes and stolen his thunder, where I've kind of, gone in and said, like, oh my goodness, this project is behind, when is it going to be done? And had I actually gone and done a thorough look in the project management software, I probably would have realized that it was actually already done. It wasn't even behind, it was already turned in. But because the place that I normally look, it wasn't there, I went into panic mode right away. And so, I have now started to train myself, like, I see something, I want to freak out, and I go, okay, no, deep breath, go and make sure, double check, do your homework. And then if it's the case, bring it up. If it's not, most of the time it's not the case, because he's a very smart man, and always on top of things. So it's been a good reminder for me to just say, like, hey, take a deep breath, take a step back, and make sure that you're on point before you're asking those questions. And I've been better, at least I think. We'll have to ask Yemi on if I've been stealing his thunder as much. I think I haven't been, so.
So I hear a couple big themes in there. So one is communication, right? Everybody, when you ever ask what is the biggest challenge in your team, or how do you wish you can improve your team? Where do you feel like you're losing the most money in how your team functions? It often boils down to communication, right? So you have a new person on your team and you're setting a new expectation and kind of creating a new language for how you're going to communicate with that person. Another one is really trust, right? So the more trust you have within your team members, I think that helps regulate that emotional reaction, right? So the higher your trust gets as you continue to develop that relationship, you're not going to have those automatic triggers. In my business, my project manager is my business partner and my brother, and there is nobody in the world that is more organized in that world than he is. And I have that level of trust that I know there's stuff going on in our project management system that I couldn't even find it if I needed to, but I know that he has it under control. So thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that, because I think those are issues that so many leaders face with their teams. And that kind of goes right into another question. So, one thing that in my experience I've really discovered to be true is that greater your diversity in your team, the more successful your team is going to be. So diversity in how you think, in how you act, in your skills and experience. And but what experience have you had with this diversity, whether it's differences in personalities, differences in communication style? How do you really access the strengths in that without it causing more problems, as it often does? And how do you really focus on making sure that you're engaging the strengths of everybody on your team so you can really benefit from that diversity?
Another really great question. That is something that I feel has largely attributed to our success. And it has been putting focus on different communication styles, different working styles, and how do we accommodate that within a large team. So we started off down this path by doing some work with a company called Culture Smith. Shane Wallace was fantastic to work with and really helped us set our functional and our frictional values of our company. But more importantly, so that kind of helped us make sure we had the right players on our team, but more importantly, helped us understand the different personality colors and how they kind of worked together. I learned so much about myself through that process, so much about our leadership team, and then of course the rest of the team and how kind of the inner workings of it. And then we kind of evolved from there. So they use regular old personality colors based on like Myers-Briggs. But then when I started working with Rich and Fallon, forgive me, I can't remember the name of it. I just call it Rich and Fallon's colors. But they follow the same principles, but they are slightly different. So I commonly have to remind myself that, their gold or their green is a blue and our blue is a green and things like that. So not only, again, did we go through kind of making sure that everybody was personality color tested, but they also use what's called a Kolbe index. And Kolbe is just so awesome. Again, I learned so much about myself, and it's kind of your natural energy in your workflow and how you use your natural energy to get work done. And so I learned about myself that I have what's called high quick start energy. So I can like sit down and just plow through something using that quick start battery for hours. Like I could probably plow through something that I found exciting for 10, 12 hours and I could not get up from the computer. But what I was finding is that I was using that quick start energy on tasks that drained my battery a lot. One of them was research. It's just not in me to go through high level of detail stuff. I'm a big picture thinker. And so they helped me again recognize where I needed to have breaks scheduled in my day and how I needed to change up my activities, and it helped me kind of schedule out my calendar. Now, my whole point of this is that we had everybody Kolbe tested, not just me. And what I learned is that there were certain team members that were doing the same thing as me, taking whatever their high, if it was quick start, if it was research, whatever. And that's kind of the mode that they would get into and use that for everything that they were doing in their job. And so it became kind of inefficient on certain tasks. So we kind of use the Kolbe index and the colors and overlap them to make sure that we've got team members in the right seats doing the right thing. So it's recognizing that, and I very much have tried to teach my team that as well, is look at it as a strength and how you can actually leverage that other person's strength to make you better and vice versa.
Yeah. Oh, that has definitely been, has to have been a key player in the success you've had. So, that, and that speaks to you as a leader, that you have that awareness that, that somebody told me the other day, actually, I thought it was the coolest perception. She said, if you take something that frustrates you about somebody else and change the word frustration to fascination, how would that change our whole perception of that issue, right? So those people that think differently, act differently, ask questions differently, look for information differently. There is we teach about an intent impact gap. So there's a gap between our intention and our actual impact in any interaction or communication. And in that gap is where frustration and perception and, all of that negativity and lost dollars for our organizations lies. So that's, really what we try to do in our organization as well. And well on that path to help increase that knowledge and awareness of people so that they can somehow flip that frustration into fascination and then turn it, actually figure out how to say, you know what, I'm so glad that you do what you do because I don't have to do it. And thank you for being so amazing in that realm, right? Thanks for sharing, Lisa. So in your opinion, what kind of qualities are really truly required to lead a team really, really well?
I think someone that is not afraid to admit when they're wrong. Someone that can be open-minded and can be supportive even when things are hard for them. So being a good leader, in my view, is the whole leaders eat last thing is so true. So that doesn't, when I say that, that's not to say that you put yourself last all the time just because, but it's, putting the team ahead of sometimes what's easy for you is so important. And making sure that everybody feels, included and, that there's a trust level there. When you look at back in your career at past managers that you've had, I don't know if you've had a job before. I really haven't, outside of
a couple years,
small things. But if I look at the people that I have either been managed by, or I have seen managed people and been like, wow, it has been a lot of those things. And also very candid with their feedback. Right. So I read that book called Radical Candor last year, and it was such an eye-opener for me. She tells the story about how this guy, Bob, who works for her, and I'll give you the close notes because it's a bit of a long story, but basically Bob keeps coming to work and turning in crappy work, and she just keeps telling him he's doing a good job, until one day, the team finally just loses it because they've been carrying his workload, and then she eventually fires Bob. And his comment was, well, why didn't you just tell me? And I was just gobsmacked by that comment, because it's something that we are all, as new managers, guilty of at some point in our career, where we have not been honest with our feedback because that was what was hard for us. And so back to that, my original comment of putting yourself kind of last in those situations, that's what makes a strong leader. Yeah. Is having those hard conversations, even though they're uncomfortable for you, they're uncomfortable for that other person too. But I feel like that's how you put that other person first, and it can be kind and professional in the delivery, but doesn't mean that you don't say what's on your mind.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that understanding, whether it's a colors or whatever kind of personality tool you use, that can provide a lot of valuable insight into that as well. If I look at my team again, I'm a very strong driver, more competitive, and really comfortable having hard conversations. I'm actually okay with it. But yet if I'm talking with either of my other two business partners, they're much further down on that spectrum. So they're, they're more easygoing and peacekeepers. So not to say that they won't have hard conversations. They're
Mhm.
professionals, they can have it, but they're not as comfortable in that energy as I am. So as a leader, that's good insight for me to have, whereas, I don't know if you know Alex Pudici with Work
Mhm.
Nicer. Him and I were part of a leadership team for a while, and we're very similar in that forceful driving. So how him and I would hash out issues, we would be very comfortable in it. Somebody looking from my business partners watching us from the outside would be so horribly uncomfortable by it. But with him, I could do that. Whereas if I'm so just that, I think knowledge is power. The more that we understand about people and can, I often say in teamwork, it's not about us. And you've referred to that as a leader, right? It's not about me. It's really about that other person. And, what do I need to do to be understanding, respectful, and build trust with that person? So good insight. Thanks, Lisa. So if you were to give your younger you leadership advice, what do you think is the one piece of advice that you would say?
I only get one.
No, that's
um,
even harder, right?
I think, okay, this is kind of two, but I'm sneaking it under the wire. Trust yourself and, tell it how it is. Those are two things that it's only honestly been recently, like the last 6 to 8 months, where I have really stepped into that of, no, you got this, and you don't need to lean on, like, yes, I lean on my team, but you don't need to lean on other people. If that's the way you think it is, then trust that and like go for it, and don't let anything hold you back or stop you. And that whole call it as you see it, that was also another inspired by the Radical Candor book of when I see something, saying, hang on a sec, what's that about? Or, hey, oh, why did that person do that? I used to kind of like glaze over it a bit just to see how it would go, and then wait to see how it played out because it was uncomfortable for me, instead of just saying, hey, no, like that's not okay, or hey, I noticed this happened, why is that? So those are my two.
I'm okay with two.
Okay.
I love that concept of trusting yourself. As you know, we do a lot of experiential team building, and I remember back when we started the ropes coursework, we did a lot of work with kids, and we still give back and do a lot of work with youth. But it never ceases to amaze me how youth or even college level students compared to professional corporate groups that I work with, how much easier the younger kids have doing the exact same initiatives, exact same challenges. And as we become more professional and more experienced, I would think that we would have more knowledge and tools to do these activities more effectively, but we don't. And I think a lot of it comes back to that when they're younger, they don't, like, they do just trust themselves, and they trust each other, and they don't question. There's not as much of a power struggle or self-doubt, or that person that might have a really, really great idea, but they don't have the confidence to speak up within their team. It's just been really interesting to me to see the vast difference. So I think that's a really good point.
Very interesting.
So my last question is, what is the impact that you would like to have as a leader?
Oh,
Big question.
that's a good one. The impact that I want to have is really, this might sound kind of cliche or funny, but for my team to enjoy where they work and feel like they are making impact. I mean, impact is one of our number one core values. So as a whole, that I can, if one day I walk away from this organization, or I step back so that it runs on its own, which is kind of what I'm hoping, that, I can look back on that and go, wow, we as a team did create an impact, and that I was able to lead us through that, because it hasn't been easy, and I'm never going to stop learning, but I think that for me will be probably the biggest win.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Lisa. It was great chatting with you. I look forward to launching my first video out into the world. So thank you for being a fantastic mentor and for help supporting me through this. And we've enjoyed working with your company, and I know that we'll continue to do so in the future.
Thanks for having me, Tara Lee. I appreciate it.
No problem. See ya.
Bye.